up, you beautiful bastards? Hope you've had a fantastic Monday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Buckle up, hit that like button, otherwise I will punch you in the throat, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today are coronavirus updates, because over the weekend we saw some massive ones. This, including the first 2 confirmed deaths from the virus in the United States, both happening in Washington State. Here I will say it is important to mention that both of those who died were elderly adults with underlying health problems. And actually, this morning we ended up seeing even more reports that 4 more people in Washington State have died. According to those reports, some of them were actually residents at a nursing home in Kirkland, Washington, which now seems like the nursing home is having an outbreak. So far, we've seen 6 confirmed cases from that facility. We've also seen reports that other residents and employees are complaining about being sick, and actually on that note, a quarter of Kirkland's firefighters are in quarantine because they visited the nursing home. Also nationwide, we saw the number of cases jump this weekend. As of this morning, we saw the number of confirmed cases at 88. This after states like New York, Florida, Rhode Island all confirming their first confirmed cases. And globally, we're seeing a similar situation. I mean, just between Saturday and Sunday, Italy reported a 50% increase in coronavirus cases, jumping from 1,100 cases to nearly 1,700. As of this morning, South Korea is reporting 4,300, right? That makes it easily the largest outbreak outside of China, which actually, on the note of China, kind of like we talked about on Thursday, we're seeing reports of a meaningful change in the number of cases in China. Because yes, while most of the world's 89,000 cases are in China today, it only reported 202 new cases and 42 deaths. Which obviously, when you're talking about the number of infections, right, 200 is still a meaningful number, but it's also the lowest number that we've seen there since January. And actually, because of this drop, we saw Wuhan close one of its 16 rapidly built makeshift hospitals. And actually, since we're talking about the coronavirus today, I do once again want to talk about the news and awareness. You know, with this situation we've talked about, it is incredibly important to stay aware of the situation, but not to panic. Right? Because with a story like this, if it was not left in the best of hands, things got out of control. Very concerning what it could actually do to the population. But also in these situations where people are concerned, they're constantly searching and sharing any bit of information that seems concerning. The possibility of sensational news and fake news spreading spikes. I mean, just look at this last Friday. You had everyone from CNN to the New York Post talking about a poll that claimed 38% of Americans, quote, wouldn't buy Corona under any circumstances because of the outbreak. Or, quote, would not under any circumstances buy Corona as the deadly virus spreads across the globe. Right, so that poll was reportedly conducted by an agency called 5W Public Relations. They surveyed 737 beer drinkers in the United States. The story takes off, it's trending on Twitter, but let's take a quick look at the poll. You know, you had The Atlantic arguing that this question wasn't even really about the coronavirus, because even though other questions in the survey explicitly mentioned the coronavirus, this specific question never did. It just asked if people would drink Corona beer or not, quote, under any circumstances now. Meaning that response could include responses from people who just don't drink Corona or just not interested in the drink itself, right? So not necessarily because of the coronavirus. And actually, of the Americans who did report regularly drinking Corona, only 4% said they would stop drinking it now, right? And so that's why we see places like The Atlantic arguing. It's one thing for unscrupulous PR agencies to get their name out by trying to mislead the public in a shameless manner. It is quite another for some of the country's most prestigious and well-known media outlets to let themselves be played. And online, that's also where we saw a lot of the anger directed. Right? The likes of Hank Green with CNN in his crosshairs, tweeting, okay, now that we've had our fun in imagining that 38% of Americans are fucking idiots, let's realize that we're all idiots for believing that CNN would check the source on this before tweeting out clickbait that makes us think less of our neighbors. Also, notably, 5W Public Relations has not released its methodology behind the poll. Actually, on that note, The Atlantic tried to obtain that methodology in more of the results breakdown, but has been unsuccessful, with the writer of that piece saying, maybe, just maybe, that's because the results show that most Americans get the difference between a disease and a beer. But yeah, ultimately that's what I wanted to touch on today. Of course, this is still a developing story in just all corners of the world. Actually, on the note of getting updates, yes, I'll link down to the latest updates from the CDC, the WHO down below. But also, I will say, friend of the show, Dr. Mike, has been doing a fantastic job of talking about this, providing updates in a non-sensationalized manner. His big thing around the coronavirus has been be alert, not anxious. And if you have questions around the coronavirus, he may have actually answered it with his last video, which was essentially like an FAQ. But yeah, ultimately that's where we are, and like with every story, I'd love to know your thoughts in those comments down below. And then let's talk about some internet-y entertainment and business news quickies. First up, we saw the K-pop group BTS doing what they do, breaking another YouTube record. They did a premiere for their newest music video, On. If you're unfamiliar with a premiere, essentially you upload the video to YouTube, it streams the first full time to a live audience where there's a chat, and then it turns into a regular video. Though I will say, unlike my podcast, which only premieres to a very low 1,000 number, the premiere for On, according to YouTube, brought in 1.54 million concurrent viewers, easily becoming the most viewed premiere on YouTube ever, surpassing the previous title holder Blackpink, who brought in 979,000 concurrents with their music video for Kill This Love. So to BTS and their fans, congratulations, but also chill out, let some other people win something, or not. For you guys, it's probably gonna be not. Moving on. Then, according to a TubeFilter report, YouTube is considering letting creators sell their own ads. Going on to say it seems like YouTube is testing a creator version of partner-sold ads, right? That being where major companies like NBC to digital content networks like SoulPancake control their own YouTube ad inventory. And in a video on Creator Insider, Tom Lung, YouTube's director of product management, specified creators can sell ads to brands, quote, with whom they already have a relationship. And in general, as TubeFilter kind of even points out, this would be a possible perk for those people that constantly get demonetized. Which I will say, as someone who is consistently demonetized because I talk about sensitive issues, i.e. the news, I am almost completely uninterested in this, right? Unless an organization has the bodies, they have the infrastructure, they have the inventory to do this. In my eyes, it's essentially YouTube saying, hey, do the job that we failed to do. You know how you've had to build a system to be fan funded and or put sponsors into the actual content itself because relying on AdSense just, it's not viable. We'd like you to continue working with those sponsors, but in a way where we also get 45% of that money where previously 100% was going to you. Because, you know, we're friends and helpful. That said, I feel a little bit crappy about shitting on YouTube for seemingly trying, but also understand that's my opinion, and a lot of that right now is fueled by just frustration. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today, and Today in Awesome, brought to you by TubeBuddy.com/DeFranco. And this is something for all creators, whether you're just starting out or you're a vet. TubeBuddy is the premier YouTube channel management and video optimization toolkit. Unfortunately, as you've seen or experienced, just making a good video is not enough. And so that's why it can be so incredibly beneficial for creators to use TubeBuddy's features like Keyword Explorer to research video topics, finding the best phrasing of words to use in titles, tags, descriptions to make your videos more discoverable on YouTube. You can also even update hundreds or even thousands of videos at once with TubeBuddy's bulk processing features. Right, things that include info cards, end screens, titles, descriptions, thumbnails across your entire library of content. And honestly, one of the best features I think, I'm gonna be diving into this head first. YouTube should have been providing this for creators years ago, A/B testing, right? Allowing you to find the ultimate video thumbnail. What are people clicking on? What are they not clicking on? Let's learn. And to make it incredibly easy, they have browser extensions available on Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera. There's even a convenient mobile app available on both iPhone and Android, and it's free to install. So if you want to join me, you want to check it out, you want to give yourself the best shot possible, just head on over to TubeBuddy.com/DeFranco or click that link in the description down below to get started today. And the first bit of awesome today is if you have been craving to get your hands on that new Final Fantasy VII Remake. They just released a demo for the game on PS4 this morning. It looks amazing. I'm excited to personally get my hands on it, though I can't because of you and this job, if we want to call it that. But yeah, I'll definitely be playing it tonight. Then we had Jenny Lewis on NPR Music Tiny Desk Concert. Bon Appetit gave us Carla making a 30-minute brick chicken. GQ gave us 10 things Lil Dicky can't live without. Side note, David, love to have you on the podcast. We had Amy Poehler and Rashida Jones taking a lie detector test. If you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then let's talk about the 2020 election, specifically what is happening with the Democrats, because it appears several of the moderate Democrats appear to be megazording right before Super Tuesday. Actually, first, before we talk about what that looks like, we should talk about why it appears to be happening. And so for that, we have to talk about South Carolina. South Carolina had its primary on Saturday, and it was incredibly notable. Right, well, tomorrow is incredibly important, right? Super Tuesday, 14 states are voting, 1/3 of the total delegates are up for grabs. It is a potential game-defining or game-changing moment, and the last kind of place to set the tone for that was South Carolina primaries on Saturday. Now, Joe Biden was expected to win South Carolina, but the way that he did so was overwhelming. He scooped up 48.4% of the vote. The closest to him was Bernie Sanders at just 19.9%, followed by Tom Steyer with 11.3%, Buttigieg 8.2%, Warren 7.1%, and Amy Klobuchar and Klobuchar coming in at 3.2%. And so with most of the votes counted Saturday night, we saw Steyer say that he was dropping out of the race. Then yesterday, in a move that surprised a lot of people, we saw Pete Buttigieg announce that he was also suspending his campaign, with Buttigieg formally announcing the decision in a speech where it also appeared that he was going after Sanders without naming him directly.
And we have a responsibility to consider the effect of remaining in this race any further. Our goal has always been to help unify Americans to defeat Donald Trump and to win the era for our values. We need leadership to heal a divided nation, not drive us further apart. We need a broad-based agenda that can truly deliver for the American people, not one that gets lost in ideology.
right? And following this, obviously he's not the winner, but you had a lot of people applauding Buttigieg's historic run, right? I mean, he was the first openly gay presidential candidate to run a competitive and successful campaign as a major candidate. Also, as I was filming today's show, we got the news that Amy Klobuchar is also dropping out. And while the whole of the Megazord matters here, let's first focus on Buttigieg, right? Because with Buttigieg, it appeared that he was dropping out because he didn't want to continue to split the moderate vote, but he also didn't endorse a candidate. Though, as we were recording, we saw reports that Buttigieg is planning on endorsing Biden, but it still brings up the question of where will his voters go? You know, a lot of people have assumed that his voters would go to a more moderate candidate like Biden. And the thing here is that we're actually seeing some contradictory polls. According to one poll by Morning Consult taken last week, 21% of Buttigieg's first choice backers said their second choice was Sanders, while 19% said Biden and Warren, and 17% said Bloomberg. But you also had a YouGov.com/CBS News poll from a few days earlier finding that 35% of supporters said Warren was their second choice, 29% said Klobuchar, 28% Biden, and 24% Sanders. But of course, those polls were taken before Klobuchar dropped out, and this morning with her campaign saying she would endorse Biden, right? Also notably before Biden's huge win in South Carolina. Right, so once these candidates actually endorse Biden, we might see those numbers shift more heavily towards him. Right, so with these big drops, it appears that the hope for the moderates is that the votes will be more consolidated going into Super Tuesday. And to that point, according to 538's analysis, Buttigieg's decision to drop out right before Super Tuesday could actually hurt Bernie, with their primary forecast now saying that Sanders' chances of winning a majority of pledged delegates fell from 28% to 23%, and the likelihood that no candidate gets a majority rose slightly from 59% to 64%, which also brings us to another big question around Buttigieg and Klobuchar's decision to drop out: delegates. Right after the first four races regarding delegates, Buttigieg is in third with a total of 26, Klobuchar trailing with 7. The process of allocating and reallocating delegates is incredibly complicated, but all you need to know is that most of their delegates will eventually be given to someone else. But also, here's the thing, even though these two are no longer in the race, they could still technically get even more delegates going into Super Tuesday. Right, their campaign has been suspended, not withdrawn, so they're still going to appear on primary ballots. And also, two, a lot of people in Super Tuesday states have already voted early or mailed in their ballots. For example, according to the California Secretary of State, more than 2.7 million of 20.6 million registered voters turned in their ballots as of Thursday. As reports have pointed out, Buttigieg was getting 10% in recent polls in California, and Tom Steyer was getting 2.7%. If the early vote mirrors the polling average, about 324,000 Californians have already cast ballots for a candidate who quit the race. And this could be something even more substantial now that Klobuchar has also dropped out, especially because she was polling at 4.7% in California. And those numbers are even more staggering in small states like Utah, where nearly 23% of active voters have already voted, and where Buttigieg was polling at 18%. But all that said, the good and or the bad thing, depending on who you want to be the nominee, is that we will know soon who's going to actually vote for who. Now, with all that said, let's talk about Super Tuesday specifically. Right, from the first four races, you have 155 delegates allocated, and tomorrow, 1,300 more are going to be given. It's a massive jump. After tomorrow, about 40% of total delegates will have been given out. And of course, the biggest two races to watch out for, you have California and Texas. Right, these are the two most populous states and have the most delegates up for grabs for all of the primaries in the country. In California, you have 415, Texas, 228. According to forecasts from 538, Bernie is projected to win California with an average 34% of the vote, while Biden is projected to win Texas with an average 30%. But very important, of course, this is not a winner-take-all like it would be in the general election. Right, no one after tomorrow is getting all of California's 415 delegates. I'm just saying who is getting the most delegates out of everyone else. And actually, to the point of most, 538 also says that Biden is forecast to win an average of 33% of the vote in North Carolina and an average of 30% in Virginia, the states with the third and fourth biggest delegate counts voting tomorrow, which is really important to note there, because even if Bernie does win a majority in California, right, and a majority in smaller states where he's popular, he could still end up with less delegates than Biden, especially if Biden sweeps in those middle-level states like Virginia and North Carolina, which have similar demographics to South Carolina. Though, I should note here that Real Clear Politics, which aggregates national polls, they still have Bernie polling at 28.5% nationally, while Biden is polling at 20%. Also, another state to watch out for is Massachusetts, which Warren represents in the Senate. Right, and Warren has been polling at the bottom of the bracket recently, so if she loses her own state, it's hard to imagine that she doesn't drop out. Right, and actually, to that point, right now, 538 actually has Bernie winning 30% of the vote in Massachusetts, while Warren comes in second with 25%. But also, the big thing to remember is even though we've seen all of these people dropping out, is we now have Bloomberg in. And I know that he's been in the debates and you've seen the ads, but I mean, a huge chunk of his advertising budget has been thrown at Super Tuesday states, and they are the first set of primaries that he's actually on the ballot. So we have the questions of how many delegates can Bloomberg win here, and how much of the vote is he going to take away from candidates like Biden? Yeah, ultimately that's where we are with this situation and mess right now. It is going to be fascinating to see what actually happens tomorrow, right? How many people have now voted for candidates that suspended their campaigns already? The Steyer, the Klobuchar, the Buttigieg voters, where do they end up migrating? And of course, till then, we'll be sitting on the side of the road waiting to see what this car crash looks like. And that is where I'm going to end today's show. And hey, if you like this video, hit that like button. If you're new here, you want more, hit that subscribe button for these daily videos. Also, if you're looking for more to watch right now, maybe you missed the last Philip DeFranco show, or you want to catch the latest podcast I put out with Rhett and Link, you can click or tap right there to watch either of those. But with that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I hope you liked this video. Subscribe if you like it.